Hi everyone, welcome to On the Other Hand. I'm Ariane Zurcher. In this video, I'm demonstrating how to do a beaded bullion knot, but as I was experimenting, it led me to a beaded bullion tendril. I also tried it with a bullion circle. So it's kind of piggybacking onto the bullion circle and the bullion tendril videos that I did, and I'll put those both up in the upper right corner so you can see those if you haven't seen them. I would definitely practice those before attempting to add beads to them, because the bead is just another element and can make it harder if you don't know how to do the tendril or the circle. In any case, I'll turn you around and we'll get started and you can see what craziness I'm up to. I'm going to use the 1800 rayon from Steph Francis and also the 4-stranded rayon. I'm not sure about how this will work because it's strands, and this one's a twist, which I think will be easier. This one is the larger. I did it on the 3600 rayon, which is just the larger of this one. But let's see what it's like on this one. And I'm using my 4mm glass beads because they go over the eye. This is also a #1 tulips Milner, because the eye here is actually narrower than the shaft, so it makes it really easy to pull, especially when you have thread on this. Any rayon thread that you can find will work well with these beaded bullions. I'm going to show you a couple of different, so for instance here I did a beginning bead, a bead in the middle, and then an end. This one I did a couple of wraps before I put the first bead on, more wraps, second bead, and then ended with the third. This one I just did one in the middle, and this one I did one towards the beginning, a couple of wraps, and then a bead. And I'll just show you how. Now, this is a stitch that I just kind of came from asking, what if you add a bead to a bullion? How would that look? And then I just started playing around. And that's the case with a lot of stitches that I come up with. It's just sort of an idea. What if I try this? Okay, so now I'm going to put on this little turquoise bead. Put it on the needle. So I did a couple of wraps, and then I'm going to wrap some more. We'll just do one for starting out. This is trickier than doing a regular bullion because, of course, you've got now a bead on it. But it's not that much trickier. It all depends on the thread. The thread is a huge component to this. If you have the wrong thread, it's going to be the difference between being able to do this pretty easily and just really having to struggle and fight. If you're struggling and fighting, find a different thread. Now, one thing that happens is when you do that bead going over the needle, push it down a little first before you make it easier on yourself. Okay, so now I'm going to pull this like this. And as always, I want to check the back and make sure that this piece spanning the length isn't pulling my fabric. If you use a hoop, that'll help, but not entirely. I've used hoops and had it still pull a little. Now I'm going to go back in about one thread away from where I came out, so I'm not puncturing a hole where when I pull this, the whole thing can just disappear inside, right? So there it is with a little bead at the beginning. Now I will show you how to put in multiple beads if you felt like it. I'm going to end this just so that it doesn't mess with my tension in the back and pull for for the next one. But look how nicely that sort of starts to curl. And this isn't even that many. I mean, All right, so now I'm going to do one here. I'll start here, and I'll end over here. Okay. All right, so let's do a couple of twists first. Just 8. And now I will put do a little green bead. Right, on. And then I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to push this down as I go. I'm going to put another bead on. Keep doing my wraps, pushing them down as I go, just like I would a tendril. If you don't know the Bullion Tendril, I'll put the video in the upper right so you can see how I do that, because it's much easier to see it without trying to also do. I wouldn't attempt this if I hadn't ever done a Bullion Tendril on its own. So now I'm going to just start pulling this down. And the reason I do that, even though I may put more wraps on, is because it just starts to get really, really difficult to pull all these wraps, especially with the beads. And now I can do more. I found that with doing a lot of Bullion Tendrils, it really made life much easier if I continued to pull the stitches, the wraps, down the shaft of the needle before I continued. Okay, I'm going to do one more bead. Do this darker turquoise. And then just a couple more. And now I'm going to pull all of this through because I'm also running out of thread. So here we go. And now I'm going to pull this and see how it's pulling the fabric. That is because my back thread is way too tight. So I have to pull it out so that it's not going to pucker the thread all up. And there I'm getting this nice little loopy tendril. And I'm going to go in not into the same hole, but in a thread away. Because if I go into the same hole that I went in before, the concern is that when I pull this through, I'm going to pull all those little wraps in with me, and I'll lose part of it. So if I go in just a thread beyond, I avoid that. The other thing is, then I want to double check and make sure that's not gathering. And then I'm going to end it with a little knot here, just so that if I did have a lot more thread, which I don't, I have to end it anyway. But if I did and started another one, starting the new one wouldn't affect this tension, which I've learned it can if I don't end it. Okay, so there's that one. You can manipulate it as far as like how you want these guys to twist. But there it is. Okay, let's do another in a different color. Let's try this one. This is the strand, the 4-strand rayon. Now, this one I did with the 3600 Steph Francis, and it was really thick, and it just made it hard to pull through. It also really twisted up on me. I really struggled. And so, as I say, if you're really fighting it, find a different thread. I'm going to start up here again. The bullion tendrils are really fun to start at the same point and end, because the curly part is at the end. And so you get these tentacles like an octopus, which is, I love that. Okay, I'm going to put this out here. I'm going to come back near where I came up. I'm going to wrap this one a little bit before I start a bead, so it's not at the same place as the other one. Okay, and now I'm going to take a bead, a different color, so it's not, it's kind of a pure green. And I'm going to pull this through so that I can get more wraps on here. So I lost my end, so I have to abandon this because, and this happens, so I'm not going to edit this out. Do you see how this is my ending and this is my knot? And what happened when I was pulling was it pulled through the fabric, and I need a bigger knot here, and I need to be a bit more gentle with my pulling. So I'm just going to cut all this out, and we're going to start over. When that happens, abandon, abort the mission. I wrapped this around for my quilter's knot. I did about 4 or 5 times around before I pulled it through. That should help. Now the other thing is not to go in the same hole. Go into a different hole. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to go over here. And then I'm going to come up close, but not in the same hole. Right? Now I can pull this through the fabric. I don't have to wait until, I start wrapping. I can pull it through. That sometimes can make it easier on myself. So I'm going to put my bead on, and I'm going to keep wrapping. And then I can pull through and wrap some more. Pull through. Wrap some more. Okay, pull this through. These wraps are very tight. You can do yourself a favor by making them a little less tight. Also, if I had pulled this through a bit sooner, rather than waiting, it would have made life a little bit easier. So now I'm going to keep wrapping. And I'm going to get another color bead. I think I'll do this color. Maybe this lime. And then some more wraps. And do another bead. I have no idea how many wraps I've done, but it's been quite a lot. So I'm going to stop, pull this through. When I pull it through, do you see how it curls here? I want to make sure that I don't get any knots, so I go pretty slowly. I don't go too fast. Do you see how it's bunching in the back? So I'm going to make sure that I pull that out. Make sure that that's really not taut at all. In fact, a little bit loose. And here I have this. Okay, so I've got wraps, I've got a bead, I've got more wraps, another bead, wraps, and a bead. And I can end with one more bead if I want, or I can just leave it now. Because remember how this bottom, if you've done any Bullion Tendrils, you know, the bottom part is what's really going to start to twist, because it's the part that gets the thinnest. And so now I'm going to end this by putting my needle just a thread away. Do you see here? My hands are so dry and my fingers are cracking because it's so dry. Even though we're getting a lot of snow and, well, rain today, but it's still very dry. So there we have it. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of pull and I'm going to, do you see how it's just kind of curling? I'm going to end this in the back. And there we have it. So it's just kind of a fun little variation. These are tendrils. All right, so let me try now another color. And let's do just a regular bullion knot with a bead on it. So it's not going to be a tendril, it's just going to be a knot. Short, right? I'm going to make a big enough knot here, so I have a nice big knot here. I think I'll start here where these other guys were. All right, so I'm just going to do a little short distance, right? We're not going to do anything crazy. Now, the only thing about doing this is that with a 4mm bead, it's a bigger bead. If I do it on these are smaller, but they're not going to fit on this needle. And it would be nice if I could get these to fit, because that would be a nice size. So I'm going to start by putting a little guy on here, and then I'm going to do my wraps. I'm just going to do 8. going to go back down. I'm going to come up over here. I'm going to do one that is close, right? Like a little circle, a bullion circle. So I'm going to come up right there. Now, another thing I can do is I can take this off the needle and put one of these beads onto the thread. Right? Now, go ahead and thread up my needle again and start and do a little circle, making sure that bead is down. Okay, that's 30. Let's see what happens. So what I have here is a little circle with a little bead inside. And I'm going to go back down now in here. Pull that down. And I'm going to tie this off so that I'm not worrying about it pulling or anything. I'm going to do another right here. And I'm going to see what the difference is if I do it this way and then put a bead in the center of the circle versus how I did it this time. Let's see what that does. If you don't know how to do the bullion circle, I'll put that video in the upper right corner as well. I don't even need my pliers to pull this through because this thread is so great for this. It's ideal. So there's my little bullion circle. I'm going to go back down. And now I'm going to come up in the center of this little spiral. And I'm going to pick up a bead. And put it in there and come back down into the center. Okay, so this one is really centered. This is more at you have a circle with the bead at where it meets. I kind of like this one better, honestly. Let's do one more. I think I'll make this a tendril. So I think in the end, because I'm just kind of playing, the bullion with the bead is similar to a French knot, but you're making it a little bit elongated. The circle is kind of fun if you want a little bead at the end. I'm not sure about the bead in the center of the circle. It's okay, but it kind of takes away from the circle. The tendrils are really fun. So I think for beading, for putting a bead as you're doing the bullion, the tendril is probably my favorite to do it. All right, I'm going to put a bead here. I'm also going to pull this through. And then keep going. Okay. No idea how many I'm doing here. So here's what I've got. Wraps, bead, wraps, bead, wraps, bead, and now a few more wraps. And then I'll end because I'm also running out of thread. Okay, so now I have to make sure that my thread down here isn't bunching, and it is a little bit, so I want to pull it. Make sure that doesn't happen. I'm going to go back down, not into the same hole, next to it. Do you see how it's next to? And then I'm going to end this. There we go. What's interesting about this is that because the beads are here, it's changing the shape of the tendrils. So instead of it having this kind of very octopusy kind of, it's a bit more random where it's curling because it has trouble curling where the beads are. It's just different. I like it, but it's not exactly the same. It's like snakes, a mess of snakes. So give it a shot and see what you think. Definitely it depends very much on the thread you're using. For me, this is my favorite. The Steph Rust says 1800 rayon. I'm sure that you can get something close to this wherever you are. Just look for a rayon thread. I find the stranded, this is a 4-strand, much, it's a bit trickier because it's not twisted, and so the strands just kind of cause another element of that you have to think about. So for me, this is the thread I like the best to use for this. There we go. This is a combination of bullion tendrils and beaded bullion tendrils layered with a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's just an example of sort of what you can do. And then I've got my little snake pit here. I think the possibilities are kind of endless as far as what you can do with these and how you can change things up. Adding beads is just one idea. When things are difficult, it's easy for me to think about whatever is going on as a problem. But if I kind of take that idea of a problem and just tweak it a little, often I'm able to see this as an opportunity to try something different, to look at something in a different light, to see it a little differently. And what that does is it helps me grow. as a human being, but also as an artist, because whatever is going on in my life is often, usually, can I say always? I think so, reflected in my art. I would say always. It may not be conscious, but if I look back, I can see what was going on in that period when I was creating whatever it was. So that's really interesting, because art really is a reflection and a response to life. And so being open and curious and exploring, trying different things, taking something that I find interesting, in this case, a stitch, and thinking, well, what else could I try with it? How else can I layer this? How else can I do this? A lot of times it ends up being, the answer is no. I don't like it. It doesn't work. It makes it much more difficult. But sometimes I hit on something and it's fun and it's interesting and it adds another layer to whatever it is. And in this case, a bullion knot. Bullion knot's pretty simple, but if you take it to the next level, it took me to a bullion tendril, which took me to a bullion circle, which then took me to beading the circle, beading the tendril, and trying different things and seeing what that looked like. So I'm just sending out love to all of you. Thank you so much for watching. And tell me what you're curious about. What are you trying? What new things have you discovered? It doesn't have to be personal if you don't want to, but if it is personal, that's great. And I always love reading any comments.